coming up on our newscast. Top nuclear envoys of South Korea, the U.S., and Japan held talks. They discussed various matters and, among other things, vowed to crack down on North Korea's illicit cyber activities. The nation's daily COVID-19 tally jumped to a 3-month high. This comes at a time when the government is considering lifting the indoor mask mandate. Ukraine's Deputy Minister of Defense spoke in South Korea at a forum. He rejected talks for a potential ceasefire until Russian forces leave Ukrainian territory. Hello and welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin with our top story. The top nuke envoys of Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo met in Jakarta for talks on North Korea. South Korea's Kim Gun held a trilateral meeting in Indonesian capital with his American and Japanese counterparts, Sung Kim and Takehiro Funakoshi. The three reportedly evaluated the latest situation on the peninsula and discussed North Korea's denuclearization. This was their first meeting in 3 months. Unification Minister Kwon Young-se reiterated that North Korea will face an unprecedented, almost irreversible level of deterrence and sanctions should it go ahead with its 7th nuclear test. This came at a press conference on Tuesday, during which Kwon stressed that the Yoon administration will continue pursuing the regime to halt provocations and work to establish official contact and trust. He added the government has plans to respond to various different situations, including the possibility of Pyongyang returning to talks. Kwon also pledged to strengthen cooperation between related ministries to secure international support and improve the chances of carrying out the so-called audacious initiative. Back here in the nation, the number of new COVID-19 cases jumped to a 3-month high. The KDCA said new infections came to over 86,000. This is more than triple the figure recorded yesterday as more people get tested on the weekdays, and it's over 9,000 higher than last Tuesday. Government officials will also decide whether to lift the indoor mask mandate by the end of this month after considering various factors such as total new cases, deaths, and hospitalizations. There were 29 deaths, and the number of critically ill patients declined by 18. The fatality rate stood at 0.11%. While most COVID restrictions are lifted, small business owners are still struggling. Most are earning less than they did when the rules were in place. Loans are getting more expensive as interest rates rise, and many of them consider closing up. Choi Min-jung zooms in on this phenomenon.
With social distancing rules eased in April, many in South Korea believed things would be closer to normal. However, this has not been the case for business owners. A quick recovery was expected, but businesses witnessed a drop in sales due to soaring prices of goods and services, as well as interest rate hikes.
Business picked up again to some extent for about a month or two, but after that, it suddenly dropped. At the minute, any sort of recovery has stopped.
Data from the Federation of Korean Industry shows that 7 out of 10 business owners saw a bigger drop in profit after the easing of social distancing rules compared to a year ago. The drop was mainly caused by sharp increases in prices of raw materials, labor costs, as well as rent. Rising loan interest rates are another key factor. The average rate was 5.9%, a 2 percentage point increase from last year. 1 in 5 people took out a loan with a high interest rate of 8% or above. Due to such challenges, 4 out of 10 business owners have thought about closing within the first 3 years. This would have a negative effect on the nation's economy.
The proportion of business owners in South Korea is about 25%, the highest among OECD countries. So if they struggle, it can eventually have a significant impact on the economy, so countermeasures are needed.
To overcome the current challenges, business owners are demanding that the government draws up policies for lowering interest rates on loans and ways to boost consumption. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Life in South Korea seems to be returning to normal, but economically, the recovery has been slow for people on low incomes. New college graduates have been having trouble finding jobs. Shin Na-young sheds light on the situation.
South Korean society has been hit hard by the pandemic. College graduates, for example, have been struggling to find jobs over the last 3 years. According to Statistics Korea on Tuesday, the employment rate for university graduates in 2020 fell more than 4% from the previous year to 57.6%. This came as small and medium-sized businesses scaled back their recruitment plans following a drop in income during the early stages of the pandemic. Due to the situation in the job market, some college students have been delaying getting their degrees even though they were ready to graduate due to the stigma or being unemployed and no longer a student. The report from Statistics Korea shows that the number of university students who postponed their graduation surged to around 19,000 last year from 13,000 in 2019 before the pandemic. Meanwhile, by job, the number of workers in the platform industry rose during the pandemic. Platform workers refer to people providing specific services or goods to customers using online platforms like smartphone applications or e-commerce sites. Among them, delivery workers took up 76%. Even though life in South Korea has been returning to normal after social distancing restrictions were mostly lifted, low-income groups have seen slow recovery. And the polarization in the average yearly income has been putting more pressure on those groups. The average annual gross income per household for those in the top income bracket in 2020 was 154.6 million Korean won, or about $118,000, nearly 23 times that of bottom bracket. Statistics Korea said that the polarization deepens as those in the high-income bracket have greater earned income, while those in the low-income brackets rely more on transfer income like subsidies, government handouts, and pensions. 신하영, Arirang News.
President Yoon emphasized the need to reform the current health insurance system to undo costly policies he called populist and said risk ruining the state's finances. This came during Tuesday's cabinet meeting.
국민 건강을 지키는 최후 보루인 건강보험에 대한 정상화가 시급합니다. 국민 혈세를 낭비하는 인기 영합적 포퓰리즘 정책은 재정을 파탄시켜 건강보험제도의 근간을 해치고 결국 국민에게 커다란 희생을 강요하게 되어 있습니다.
This is seen as a move to reverse the policies which expanded health insurance coverage in order to lower the upfront costs of more medical services. Yoon pointed out the government has poured more than $15 billion into the scheme but has overlooked medical misappropriation and insurance free riding. He said the criteria for use of the system need to be tightened to prevent waste and to save money for helping vulnerable people. Starting next year, South Korea will pay a child care allowance of around $530 to parents with newborns, a considerable raise from the current rate. It comes as the country attempts to tackle low birth rate and shrinking population. Kim Hyun-sung explains further.
Parents in South Korea will be getting more government support starting next year. A child care allowance of up to 700,000 Korean won, or around $530 a month, will be given to parents with newborns. That's more than double the current 300,000 won stipend. Parents of one-year-olds will be given a stipend of 350,000 Korean won, or $270. This decision comes as the government struggles to turn around Korea's sinking birth rate. Earlier this year, South Korea broke its own low birth rate record. Statistics Korea show that the country's fertility rate sunk to an all-time low of 0.79, dropping even further from last year's dismal rate. This wilting birth rate is projected to bring the country's economy down with it. Goldman Sachs, an American global investment bank, had earlier projected that the South Korean economy may start to shrink in about 4 decades and may fall behind those of the Philippines and Malaysia by 2075. Authorities may raise child care allowances even higher in 2024 to 1 million won, or around $780. Along with the stipend, Korea is expanding childcare services and is planning to build around 500 government-owned nurseries every year until 2027. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
A set of surveys released by Statistics Korea provides a glimpse of trends in South Korean society. Senior citizens living with spouses claim to be most satisfied with their lives. Not the case for those living alone or living with their children. Shin Se-byuk helps us look beyond the digits.
South Korean senior citizens living with their spouses are more satisfied with their lives than those living alone or with their children. This is according to a set of surveys released on Tuesday by Statistics Korea on trends in Korean society. In 2020, on the life satisfaction of people aged 65 and older by household type, nearly 53% of respondents who live with their spouses say they are satisfied with their lives. Those living with children followed at 47.3%, while a little under 43% of those living alone said they were satisfied. Married couples 65 and older showed higher satisfaction in different aspects of their lives, including health, as well as their relationship with children and friends. Another survey suggests that Koreans are getting more satisfied with their lives. In 2013, the life satisfaction score of Koreans was 5.7 out of 10. It inched up to 6.1 in 2018 and to 6.3 last year. However, this is still lower than the OECD average of 7.6. When it comes to the happiness index, South Korea scored 5.94 out of 10 to rank as the 59th happiest country in the world. It's much lower than the US in 16th and Japan in 54th. Meanwhile, when it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic, over half of South Koreans believe that the pandemic will become a perpetual phenomenon. And only less than 1/5 of the total respondents believe that the pandemic will end at some point. As for the level of people's return to pre-pandemic normalcy, South Koreans on average give a score of 61.4 points out of 100. Of them, people in the low-income brackets with a monthly income of 2 million won or less gave an average score of under 50. 신세벽, Arirang News.
The U.S. Federal Reserve will decide on interest rates this week. Ahead of that, data suggests American consumers expect inflation to gradually come down in 2023. Lee Seung-jae has the details.
According to a New York Federal Reserve survey released on Monday, U.S. consumers are more optimistic about inflation in November due to expectations that both food and energy price increases will be less severe next year. The survey of consumer expectations showed respondents see one-year inflation running at 5.2%, down 0.7 percentage points from October's reading. The reading is also the lowest since August 2021, when inflation began gripping the U.S. and the Fed began to aggressively hike rates. The New York Fed also says consumers expect big drops in food prices in a year from now. Home price increases are also expected to slow. American consumers also lowered their expected inflation for 3 years from now, expecting 3% compared to 3.1% in October, while their expected inflation 5 years from now was 2.3%, down 0.1 percentage point from the previous outlook. The report comes ahead of this week's FOMC meeting, where Fed officials are widely expected to moderate the pace of their aggressive campaign of rate hikes. They're expected to raise the key interest rates by 50 basis points from the previous 75 basis point increases. The Federal Reserve believes consumer expectations on inflation is a good indication that its aggressive rate hikes are working, as the Fed hopes to achieve its inflation target of 2%. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Elsewhere around the world, fears are growing that Iran is preparing to execute more activists linked to recent anti-government protests. On Monday, authorities carried out a second public execution related to the protests, hanging 23-year-old man Majid Reza Rahnavard from a construction crane. This was carried out less than a month after he was arrested for allegedly killing 2 members of a paramilitary force deployed by Iranian authorities to suppress dissent. Iran's judiciary said the court convicted him of enmity against God, and he was reportedly denied a lawyer of his choice for his trial. Ukraine's deputy defense chief spoke at a forum in South Korea. He rejected talks for a potential ceasefire until Russian forces leave Ukrainian territory. Western countries have pledged to support Ukraine for as long as it takes. Yoon has the latest.
Bombardments continue between Ukraine and Russia as the war in its 10th month shows no end in sight. Just last week, Ukrainian drones struck 2 air bases deep inside Russian territory, to which Russia quickly retaliated with a massive missile barrage that struck homes and buildings, killing civilians. Amid worries that further escalations could make the war turn nuclear, Western countries have been expressing hopes of a ceasefire, suggesting Christmas as a date for Russian forces to withdraw. But Ukrainian Deputy Minister of Defense Volodymyr Gavrilov sees no end in sight for the war. During a defense forum hosted by the Korea Institute for Defense Analyses on Monday, he said as long as Russia is on Ukrainian territory, there will be no ceasefire.
Russia is interested in ceasefire just to strengthen the military posture in Ukraine. Until Russia is on our territory, there is no possibility of ceasefire.
He also mentioned the worries about the war turning nuclear.
I don't want to talk about nuclear, but if the Russia decide to apply nuclear, of course, it's the most highest level of escalation in this conflict. But I hope it will never happen.
Active support from Western countries has helped Ukraine fight back. In response to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's appeal to the virtual G7 meeting being hosted by Germany, the group of 7 leaders vowed to support Ukraine for as long as it takes. The leaders of the world's wealthiest nations on Monday pledged their unwavering support, promising to meet Ukraine's urgent requirements, as the G7 leaders also called on their finance ministers to meet in the near future for discussions on supporting Ukraine in 2023. 이은진, Arirang News.
The war in Ukraine dealt a severe blow to various sectors. The impacts now being felt even by tangerine farmers on Jeju. Russia is by far their biggest customer, but is cut off right now. According to our Jo Sang-min, the local government is trying to help them diversify.
The ongoing war in Ukraine is even having an impact on fruit farms on Korea's southernmost Jeju Island. Usually at this time of year, factories are busy packaging tangerines to be shipped to Russia, the biggest importer of Korean tangerines. In 2021, 47,000 tons of tangerines were exported to Russia, which is 80% of all of South Korea's exports of the fruit. Industry experts expected the figure to even increase moving forward as Russia decided to ban tangerine imports from China in 2019. But because of the war, export routes have been blocked and these tangerines have nowhere to go. Farmers are critical of the situation as they believe the outlook won't change for the better anytime soon.
While the exports could resume starting next week, they won't be as active as last year. We are seriously thinking about this issue, and farms with large yields are facing issues shipping out their goods.
Some experts believe that routes must be diversified to unblock the export bottleneck.
We expect exports to reduce by around 2,000 tons because of the war. If we can expand our routes into Singapore, the US, and Canada, we believe we can ship up to 45,000 tons.
Local authorities are cooperating with farmers to search for alternative export routes and ways to boost local consumption. Jo Sang-min, Arirang News.
Jin, the oldest BTS member, began military service on Tuesday. He is the first of the K-pop group to do so. He will be assigned to a unit after finishing a 5-week basic training course. All able-bodied South Korean men aged between 18 and 28 must serve for about 2 years. Jin, aged 30, was eligible for deferment with a bill passed 2 years ago that allowed pop stars to delay their service until 30. Another BTS member, Suga, has earned approval to serve as what's called a social service agent instead of as active duty soldier. South Korea's media content is gaining massive popularity all over the world. The country aims to expand such content using innovative technology, specifically virtual studios. Shin Yeon takes a look at the innovations that Korea is making in its content production.
Guess where I am right now? I'm on a spaceship looking out into space. I can even see Earth from here. Though it may look authentic, it's all happening behind this LED wall, which creates realistic graphics and allows content producers to bring life to their imagination without being tied down to any barriers.
Before these so-called virtual studios appeared, producers in Korea had to pour in more time and money to make a better product. They sometimes had to fly to different locations, make numerous sets, and film using green screens. But advances in digital technology have revolutionized filming. The game changers, LED walls, and tracking devices.
If you look at the camera, you can see small red trackers. Then, if you look up at the ceiling, there's white dots. These white dots reflect light, which the camera tracker detects. This way, the camera maps everything, like the 3D virtual environment shown on the LED screen. It can film all 360 degrees as if it's inside this virtual space.
Because K-content has proved its value overseas, more businesses like SK Telecom have jumped into the virtual production industry.
It's all about efficiency. We're trying to lead not only the Korean wave, but also the Asian movement. Thanks to digital technology, we can be smart about making content. We're planning to use 5G, artificial intelligence, and cloud services to advance the quality of production here.
The Ministry of Science and ICT is looking to make virtual production the new norm.
We are talking with the finance ministry to see how much money we can allocate to support the virtual production. We hear it costs around 40,000 to 80,000 US dollars a day to use a virtual studio, which could be a burden for small and medium-sized enterprises. Our goal is to break down any entrance barriers and increase opportunities for more people to access digital studios.
This matches the government's vision of providing better infrastructure for content creators, especially since content has become one of the country's main exports. Yoon, Arirang News.
In recent years, there have been attempts to create contact lenses that make life more convenient for people with diabetes. Researchers in South Korea have developed a type of lens that accurately detects glucose levels rather in tears, helping reduce the need to draw blood. Jung Woo-ju introduces to us this breakthrough.
A South Korean research team has developed a type of smart contact lens that can automatically check blood sugar levels by just wearing them. A small device placed near your eyes while wearing the lenses detects your current blood sugar level and immediately displays it on a smartphone. This smart lens consists of an antenna, a semiconductor chip, and a sensor that can measure blood sugar. In order to quickly absorb even a small amount of tears, a hydrogel that has numerous small pores on its surface is filled with a nanocatalyst to increase reaction speed and sensitivity. This enables the smart lens sensor to immediately check the user's glucose levels. Made in collaboration with a soft contact lens manufacturer, this smart lens can measure blood sugar, be worn all day, and even correct vision.
Color lenses also have shapes, but they're invisible to the naked eye. As long as shapes don't block the passage of pupils, we cannot see them. The circuit we're making is also on the outside of the pupils, so it does not impair sight.
After conducting clinical trials and experimenting on rabbits, scientists have confirmed that the smart lenses accurately measure glucose levels just as well as conventional meters.
We're collecting various safety and efficacy data required by the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety to conduct full-scale clinical trials and hope to commercialize the smart lens in 3 years after conducting the clinical trials within 1 year.
The research team has also succeeded in developing LED smart lenses that can prevent retinopathy, a complication of diabetes, by allowing the developed lens to emit remedial light. They're also developing smart lenses that can directly administer corrective drugs to the eyes according to the blood sugar it measures. Jung Woo-ju, Arirang News.
Some extreme cold wave is set to sweep across the nation tomorrow. Most parts of the country will be under cold wave alerts. Eastern Gyeonggi-do and parts of Gangwon-do province will be especially cold with warnings in place. For the morning, places like Daegwallyeong and Gangwon-do province will be extremely cold at minus 17 degrees. Snowfall is forecast to become more widespread and heavier tomorrow. Northern and central regions, including Seoul, will see 1 to 5 centimeters. Surrounding regions, including southern Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do province, will have heavy snowfall of up to 10 centimeters. As temperatures will plummet significantly overnight, frost may appear on the roads, making conditions extra slippery. Please be extra careful. Minus figures will take over nationwide. Seoul will be starting off at minus 10 degrees. Daily highs in Seoul will get up to minus 4, Daejeon minus 1, Gyeongju will be reaching 0 degrees. Cold wave conditions will last until the latter half of the week for most regions. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That's all from us. As always, thank you for watching.